Like I said, this has been a terrible year for Fortnite, and after seeing the leaks of Chapter 5, confidence in that became a lot lower as well. And the last thing I just want to say is, enjoy this season while you can, because this might be Fortnite's last hurrah and probably the last greatest thing we're going to see from Fortnite in either a while or ever. And the craziest thing is, I turned out being right. What is going on YouTube and the great people of the internet? It is your boy ThunderBuddy29 here, back today with another video, as Fortnite Chapter 5 is now finally over, as we are now in Chapter 6. Even though we're now in Chapter 6, I still continue to ask myself, what happened in Chapter 5? Where did it all go so wrong? How did a chapter that looked so promising and exciting in the beginning just go on a massive downhill spiral? Now, to get an answer to all those questions, we start back to the very beginning. It was November 2023. Chapter 4 had just ended. Season OG was in full swing. The season was a massive success for Fortnite. Over 100 million players logged into the game during that 30-day season. It was the highest player count Fortnite ever had since 2020. Things were going great for Fortnite. But what does any of this have to do with Chapter 5 exactly? Well, there was a thing or two that happened at the end of that season that were pretty big red flags. The first one was during the second half of the season, they were actually trying to age restrict skins for not being quote-unquote kid-friendly, like the Deadpool skin for holding a gun. They tried to age restrict skins for things like that. This had backfired so badly, and the entire Fortnite community was outraged so badly to the point that Fortnite would have to reverse the decision and pretty much say, we're not going forward with this, and instead remodify it. And the second red flag happened during the end of the season during the Big Bang event, which was the finale event of the season. This event did receive a lot of criticism for a few main reasons. A lot of people complained that the event was too short or that it was a giant advertisement. But most of the criticism was directed at the connection problems because most people were stuck waiting in queues, people kept being kicked out of the game, it was nothing but a giant clusterfuck. But with all that being said, it was kind of a sign of what to expect in Chapter 5. But back then, none of us had any idea that those same types of issues and other terrible decision makings would be constantly repeated over and over again all throughout Chapter 5. Fortnite Chapter 5 had finally arrived, with an entire fresh new map and an entire new loot pool. And with a whole bunch of new mechanics along with Peter Griffin and Snake from Metal Gear Solid. It was looking like Fortnite had a bright future ahead of them going into Chapter 5. Well, at least for a while, because eventually it would not last. Because after the first month, the player count would rapidly decrease. But why exactly, and what had caused this massive decline in player counts? Well, first and foremost, going into Chapter 5 on day 1, it was still having those same connection problems as it was during the Big Bang event from the day before. And number 2, this was immediately after an OG season, and the people who came back to the game only just to play the OG season were most likely going to just quit the game again anyway. But there were some who did decide to stick around, probably because of Peter Griffin. And number 3, they did not offer enough content for such a large active player base, especially for a player base that is fired up and excited for a new chapter. And the first example happened during Winterfest. You know how you would open your free presents in a cabin every Winterfest? However, during that one, you did not have a cabin at all. Instead, you would open your presents on a blank screen in the main menu. And that, my friends, is one of many examples of why that was the laziest Winterfest we had ever seen at that point. And second example, during the first 45 days of the season, you did not have any major updates at all. You would have very small ones then and there, but you did not have any major ones. Until after 45 days, and the only thing that we got during that major update was a cardboard box.
Who at Epic Games thought it was a good idea? Hey, Jim, you know what would be a great idea today? After 47 days of no content, you know what we should give everybody? Let's give them a box. But not only are we going to give them a cardboard box, we're going to make it mythic. But we're also going to make it more common than all the healing items in the game, because that makes sense. It's going to be easier for them to find a cardboard box than it is for them to find like minis or like a med kit.
Now, things like those was not going to keep people around for long. The hype and excitement that people have for Chapter 5 was all beginning to slip away. It was almost the same as what happened in Chapter 2. Despite having major success at the start, where they fired up an excited player base, but when there was little to no content being offered, it did nothing but drive people away. But as for Chapter 5, the two things I just mentioned was damaging Chapter 5, but the damage was minimal. So the real question is, what did the most damage to Chapter 5? What was driving people away? Well, my friends, it was because of, once again, terrible decision making. It's no secret that Fortnite has made so many terrible decisions all throughout Chapter 5, and the first one was messing with the movement. This did receive a ton of backlash. Most of the Fortnite community was not happy that they decided to mess with the movement. Fortnite got slammed for this a lot since day 1 of Chapter 5. It had gotten so bad to the point that the word movement trended on Twitter. It hadn't even been a week, and Fortnite was already receiving a ton of backlash. Now, Fortnite would, however, address this issue. Even though it was not fully fixed, it was still better than what it was. But here's the thing. The movement was already fine as it was. I don't understand why Fortnite would try to fix something that was not broken. This was something that should have never been tampered with in the first place. And the second example, this will take us back to Winterfest. You know the snowball launcher, the gun that returns every Winterfest. The 6-rocket grenade launcher that fires snowballs. This time, however, they decided to nerf the living hell out of it. Instead of it firing its normal 6 rockets, they lowered it to fire 4, and the maximum damage it did was 50. Now, this was honestly one of the most pointless changes if you ask me. Now, keep in mind, this has been in every single Winterfest since the very beginning. But this time, however, they completely disgraced its entire legacy. In example number 3, this takes us to the item shop. Now, the item shop is another thing Fortnite constantly gotten slammed for a lot in the beginning of Chapter 5. It was getting criticized for its lack of changes and a lack of new items. Now, Fortnite would address this too, but however, in the wrongest way possible. And what did they do exactly? They decided to remove the countdown feature, which would tell you when the item shop would reset.
Are you serious?
Like, why exactly? What was the problem with it? Did anyone even complain about it? No. And even if someone did, it would be the dumbest thing to complain about. Just about as dumb as removing it. There was no problem with it to begin with. In example number 4, the direction Fortnite was going. Like, Fortnite was turning into a complete different game. Like when it comes to the graphics, the gun gameplay, and bullet drops, and most of all, introducing weapon mods to the game, with multiple different attachments to add to your guns. Like, instead of being known as that once insanely popular battle royale game, they were like trying to be a Roblox Call of Duty wannabe type game, and especially with its new modes. And I think all that alone contributed to the downfall of Season 1. As we are about to go into Season 2, things were about to take a turn for the worse. Fortnite Chapter 5 Season 2 had finally arrived, but hold up, we got a roadblock. And what I mean by roadblock is that we are once again stuck in wait queues. And that's how it was during the entire first day of that season. The servers had not been working as they normally would, causing massive server outages. When it was all said and done, it had taken almost 20 hours to get the servers up and running again, which made this the longest downtime in Fortnite history, breaking its previous record that has been held since 2018. In the end, this would be the worst season launch in Fortnite history. But despite all that, the season overall was looking pretty good. You had wings you could fly on, you had new mythic weapons, new map locations, reworked boss fights. You had Midas, and you had Floor's Lava return for the first time since Chapter 1. It looked like Fortnite's old glory was coming back, and the season was going to be remembered for more than just having that disastrous launch. It did look that way, but unfortunately, it would not last. During the second half of that season, it was all starting to fall apart, and the reason why it was once again terrible decision making. And one of the worst possible decisions that Fortnite could have made was removing cosmetic rarities. Now, this decision had absolutely pissed off a lot of people, and one of the reasons why it did was because all the skins and all the items that you own no longer have any type of rarity. Overnight, your Fortnite locker would go from that to this. Everything was just completely blank. And the reason why Fortnite made this decision was because the Battle Royale inspired system of colors and tags were quote unquote old. What the fuck? Like, that was a fucking terrible response. And I don't know what the hell Fortnite was thinking when it came to making a response for one of their most atrocious decisions yet. If their system of tags and colors were quote unquote old as they put it, then why were video games like Overwatch and Call of Duty not following suit with this? Probably because they realized that decision was just stupid and pointless, and most of all, it was never a problem to begin with. And the most hilarious part that came from all that was when Fortnite got community noted on Twitter for their terrible response of their system of colors being quote unquote old. That entire fiasco was just nothing but stupid, but unfortunately things would continue to go south from there. Just shortly after this, they would do a collab with Avatar: The Last Airbender. It looked like another one of those typical collabs Fortnite always does. Fortnite was actively trying to sweep the whole cosmetic rarity controversy under the rug like it never even happened. And for a little bit, it looked like it was working and that entire fiasco would be forgotten about. But unfortunately for Fortnite, that was not to be, because this would end up getting them into another controversy. This time, however, it was because they vaulted all of the season-themed mythic weapons just to have this collab. At that point, that was one of the most unheard of things when it came to Fortnite. Launching a season with its theme and everything, and then just to abandon it mid-season just to have a collab. This did piss off a good amount of people, but the next thing I want to talk about, this is what really upsetted people the most. And that was because one man, who was in charge of the Fortnite storyline, and the former chief creative officer at Epic Games, would finally come out of the shadows, and that man was Donald Mustard. He had decided to leave Epic Games in September of 2023, and for 7 months, this had remained a mystery. Nobody knew the real reason of why he decided to leave Epic Games and the entire gaming industry altogether, until April 2024 when Donald Mustard decided to speak out and give his first interview since he departed from Epic Games 7 months earlier, answering the question that we've all had for 7 months. Why did Donald Mustard leave Epic Games? Well, one of the big reasons why he did was mainly because of disagreements they were having with each other. Donald Mustard was devastated because Epic Games started moving away from live events in favor of building Fortnite Lego, Rocket Racing, etc. Quote, basically, the event team was started to be needed to work on other stuff. And it was devastating to me because I'm like, this live events is actually the magic, and not everyone at Epic agrees with that, end quote. So Donald Mustard wanted to continue the storyline despite Fortnite pushing the whole metaverse. Everyone at Epic Games disagreed with him, which saddened Donald Mustard, and then later on in the interview, it would be revealed that his team that were in charge of these live events and the storyline, they were being pulled to go work on the metaverse. And there was also another thing that we learned in that interview as well, and that was Chapter 3 Season 3 was his very last season that he had ever worked on, which meant he had nothing to do with the end of Chapter 3, and he had nothing to do with Chapter 4 as well. There were a ton of questions being answered in that interview. The dots were finally starting to connect. But while that was happening, this had put a big dent into Epic Games' reputation. A lot of the Fortnite community was disheartened and saddened when they found all this out. Donald Mustard loved this game. He had a lot of care for this game too. He wanted to keep the storyline, the magic, alive, but everyone at Epic disagreed, just so they could focus on game modes that were getting less than 50,000 players on average. After all this happened, a lot of players were upset, but reality was also starting to set in at the same time, that Fortnite is not the same game as it once was. And the reason why this season fell off It's because Fortnite was too busy trying to solve problems that did not exist in the first place. But as we would go on to Chapter 5 Season 3, it was like a ticking time bomb that was waiting to explode.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
Chapter 5 Season 3 had finally arrived. This season definitely looked like it was going to finally break the Season 3 curse. But less than 1 week into the new season, it was all starting to fall apart. As this season would quickly become one of the worst seasons of all time, and not only that, it was the most controversial season ever. Even though you had Fallout and Metallica, even then it was still not enough to save the season. And one of the things that sparked massive controversy with this season was the cars with mounted turrets. This would cause a massive divide within the Fortnite player base. It was mainly a divide between casual players and sweat players. While most of the casual players were in favor of the cars, most of the sweat players were not. It was almost like a sense of deja vu, like what happened back in Chapter 1 Season X when they added in the brutes. It was almost like Fortnite was trying to take a similar approach with the cars. Fortnite probably had no idea of how much controversy this would cause later on. But what had caused all this controversy? Well, it all started with just one viral clip.
We're gonna land in the middle of nowhere. We're gonna land in the middle of nowhere. We're gonna loot up. We're gonna find a vehicle. We're gonna fucking not attack anyone. We're gonna gas the vehicle. Make sure that it's got its bulletproof tires. Make sure we got the cow catcher on it and a mounted turret. You're gonna carry a repair torch. You're gonna carry a repair torch, and then we're gonna play like the biggest fucking losers in the world. Because this season is absolute dog fucking water. If I was a 5-year-old that still loved cool cars, I would be having the time of my life. I'm a 32-year-old grown man that likes to fucking shoot things, right, in video games. And now I have to drive a vehicle around and pray that I run into people that have a worse vehicle than me.
This clip did receive a lot of mixed reactions. A lot of the sweat players and a handful of casual players agreed with him, while a majority of the casuals did not. But either way, the community was so heavily divided, it was mostly divided between sweats and casuals. Now, this is nothing new at all. Sweats and casual players have always been at each other's necks. But it was not until then that people began to see that this was an actual issue. It was an issue that had been ignored for years. And with all this being said, this had put Fortnite into a pretty tight spot. Fortnite had dug themselves a hole that they could not get out of. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Eventually, they would have to make the tough decision and they would have to take a side. They would have to either side with the sweat players or side with the casuals. Either way, it was a win-lose scenario no matter whose side they took, because they would satisfy one side, but at the expense of pissing off the other. Now, 1 week into the season, Fortnite would make the tough decision. The cars would end up getting nerfed, which satisfied the sweat players but pissed off the casuals. There was a massive outcry within the Fortnite player base. Some even blamed Ninja for it. But either way, it was a win-lose scenario for Fortnite no matter whose side they took. The damage had already been done. Weeks would pass, the Fortnite player base was frustrated still and already getting burnt out of the season. But then Fortnite would introduce a brand new side mode, which was very good news for Fortnite in general, but was really bad news for the season and for the Battle Royale mode overall. And that, my friends, was the introduction of Fortnite Reload. Fortnite Reload was introduced to the game 1 month into the season. It was an OG themed mode. You had a lot of the OG loophole return mixed with Chapter 2, you were playing on a mini version of the OG map, and you had some of its graphics as well. Except this mode worked a little differently compared to the main Battle Royale mode, and that was, when you die, if your teammates live long enough, you would be rebooted into the game. It was different, but it was a pretty simple concept. This mode had quickly gained a lot of hype and popularity. In Reload's first 30 minutes, it already had more players than every mode combined, including the metaverse ones. Now, I know some people will say, but that kind of thing usually lasts for like a day or so. Okay, fair enough. But however, in this case, That was not to be. It would continue to dominate against the main Battle Royale mode for another few days, to eventually another few weeks. Fortnite Battle Royale's player count was starting to sink to an all-time low, to the lowest that it had ever been. This is the first time that a side mode was completely dominating against their main mode. This has never happened before in Fortnite's entire history, and this was a major embarrassment for Fortnite. Now, I do agree with the point that Reload did in fact cause Battle Royale's player count to sink to an all-time low, but not by 100%. And the reason why is because even before Reload came out, Chapter 5 Season 3 had the worst player count performance for a season launch. They were struggling to even get 1 million players on average. It was also because many people were not happy with the direction that Fortnite was going. The season had a good concept, it had a good theme, but it had a very poor execution. People were getting sick and tired of the way Fortnite was going. People wanted to go back to when Fortnite was a simple game to play, not this insanely realistic Call of Duty wannabe type game that it was becoming. People were getting sick and tired of the cars and nitro fists. People wanted to go back to when Fortnite was simple, when Fortnite was more original, and Fortnite Reload was a great compromise. I mean, whether if you're a casual player, a sweat player, a new player, or OG player, this was something everyone could get behind on. Regardless if Reload was added to the picture or not, Chapter 5 Season 3 was doomed from the start no matter what. But if it had not been for Reload, this season would have been a bigger catastrophe than what it was. But all hope for Fortnite Chapter 5 was not yet lost, as we would go on to the fourth and final season. Fortnite Chapter 5 Season 4 had finally arrived. Thank God Season 3 was over. And the theme they went for this season was of course a Marvel themed one. The first Marvel themed season since 2020. But this was Fortnite's very last hope for Chapter 5. And knowing that this was going to be a Marvel themed season, the Fortnite player base was fired up and excited for this season. During the season's first few hours, you had over 3 million people log into the game. The player base was the most excited they have ever been in a long time. What could all go possibly wrong? And once again, Fortnite was stuck between a rock and a hard place, but this time when it came to the Marvel Mythic weapons. This was once again a fight between casual players and sweat players, because most of the casual players loved the Mythic weapons, while a lot of the sweat players hated them. And once again, for the second time, it would work into the sweat's favor when Fortnite decided to nerf all the Mythic weapons. And as expected, this did not go too well. And once again, there was a big divide within the Fortnite community. But there were a small handful of casual players like myself who did agree that these changes were needed.
I know some mythics have been tweaked already, and I think that they were needed. I already know people are pissed about the nerfs, and I just want to say, I don't want to hear shit about how it's comp players' fault again. It's not. It's epic.
And as expected, many of them would go on to blame the sweats. And once again, there was a divide in the Fortnite player base. Now, I hate to be that kind of person to defend sweats, but here in this case, they had nothing to do with the nerfs. The one who made that decision was Epic. But there is one thing that is definitely certain. All of that could have been easily prevented if Fortnite would have just split the loot pool, take the mythics out of the competitive modes, and keep them in the casual modes. That way it's a win-win for everybody. But no, because once again, Fortnite decided to dig themselves a hole that they could not get out of. And as the season would go on, we would get a mini-event. But this mini-event, it would feature Dr. Doom, but a giant version of Dr. Doom that you would just have to shoot at and knock down his HP, which they gave him over 1 million. Basically, you would shoot at Dr. Doom for an hour straight just to see this.
That's it?
The event was just boring. All you did was went through multiple different matches for an hour straight just to shoot at a giant Dr. Doom, which it was pretty much just a copy and pasted version of the Storm King event from 2019. And then eventually as we go to October, then we start to see some good stuff come from Fortnite. The Fortnitemares was actually surprisingly good. This was the first seasonal event in a long time that was actually good. It had rebuilt a lot of people's confidence when it came to seasonal events. But even greater news, The season was going to get a finale event, an event that was going to conclude the entire chapter, but unfortunately it was something that most of us did not expect at all. But instead of it being something like defeating Galactus back in 2020, we just watch a bunch of rappers perform on stage.
You shitting me?
Fortnite, you were in a Marvel-themed season. How could you have fucked this up? You could have made like a follow-up event to the Doctor Doom event from a few months ago. You could have made an explanation to like what happened to Jonesy or what happened to Hope. But nope, they had to use rappers instead. This season had a lot of potential, but Fortnite just wasted it. And out of all chapters that we had before, ending a chapter in this way was nothing but embarrassing. And now I approach my ending conclusion. What had happened to Fortnite Chapter 5? What made people lose interest in this chapter? And this argument is very divided. But I think it was mainly because Fortnite was too busy focusing on things that were way less important than the things that mattered the most. Like in Season 1, when they messed up the movement, or in Season 2 when they got rid of cosmetic rarities with one of the worst excuses possible. Fortnite was constantly trying to solve problems that did not exist in the first place. They were trying to fix things that were not broken. Of course, you can easily blame the bad updates, you can easily blame the sweat players, but eventually I think people are going to get bored of playing something so much and for so long. Fortnite had paid very little attention to its player base and its feedback as well. And not only that, Fortnite was also trying to move away from things that made this game great in the first place, like the storyline for example. Chapter 5 Season 2 and Chapter 5 Season 4 are the greatest examples of this. There were a lot of moments they could have continued the Fortnite storyline. They could have continued on Donald Mustard's magic, as he had put it. But instead, Fortnite cared more about the metaverse more than the heart and soul of their game. There was not just one reason why Chapter 5 became the most hated chapter in Fortnite history, there were multiple reasons why, as we had covered them all in this documentary. Now to close this video, I hope another catastrophe like this never happens again in the future. Now I know Fortnite had definitely taken some notes on this, as they are slowly redeeming themselves in Chapter 6. I just hope Chapter 6 will not make the same mistakes as they did in Chapter 5. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This is ThunderBuddy29, signing off for now. Thank you all so much for watching.